If you love movies, you're in the right place. In this place, it's here at the Chronicle, the official film podcast for the people's movies. Welcome back. This is episode 49 of the podcast. My name is Paul. I am the host. I'm also the editor of the people's movies. Thank you very much for joining us. And like the last episode, it was Becky, but this time we have a new co-host with me, and that is Aaron Gillingham. How are you, Aaron?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. So maybe have a little chat at the end where you can share a wee bit about yourself and where you're writing that, and obviously you're right here at People's Movies and Chronicle, and yeah, the other things that you do. So for this episode 49, we're going to do a special. It's horror again, maybe a bit of thriller, maybe a bit of something else, and it is the FrightFest special. Aaron, I am a long way away from London, and I never got to FrightFest,
Mm.
and you're the man, so you will be doing a lot of the talking, but I will obviously ask a few questions there and then. I will
Yep.
be doing one of the reviews. Let's get started, folks. So, what review would you like to start with first? Just tell us a little bit about it, what it's about, if you liked it or
Mm.
didn't like it.
Well, I'm going to start with the best way I can describe this is a double whammy because it was the opening film of the festival, but it was also the worst that I saw.
Okay, cringe.
uh, yeah, I'm going to start off low and then get progressively better.
Good.
Because I think this year I only saw seven films. Last year when I did the festival virtually, which was my first year doing it last year, only I did about 11.
Ooh,
Um, but the spread this year was a bit more of a mixed bag. um,
yeah.
so the first film I want to talk about, which was the opening film, was The Home, directed by James DeMonaco, which stars Pete Davidson, and focuses on a troubled man named Max, who is in his mid-20s, and as part of his community service, he has to serve time helping out at a retirement home. But obviously, as these films go, there's something not quite right with the retirement home, something creepy is going on, and he's told to avoid the fourth floor. And that's kind of all you get going into it in terms of a premise. So, yeah, this one is for an opening film. It's a weird one to open with because it is as generic as you could probably get in terms of horror. I'm not. I say this as someone who's done FrightFest 2 years in a row. I'm not the biggest horror person in the world, um, but I know what sort of horror films I do and don't gravitate towards, and this definitely is one that I probably, if it wasn't part of this festival, I probably wouldn't go out of my way to watch it. Um, I get what it's trying to do, and there are films that are similar to it that have done this kind of thing better. Tonally, it feels like it's trying to find the sweet spot a little bit, something along the lines of Get Out, where someone goes to like an estate sort of thing, and things get out of hand very quickly, and everything derails. But there's this film in terms of execution is probably the biggest issue because James DeMonaco is one of the co-creators of The Purge, and him and the other person who he wrote this film with, whose name escapes me at the moment, both worked on The Purge. So it baffles me as to like how comes they've gone from a decent franchise to this. But yeah, the execution of a lot of the scares in this film are probably where its biggest issues lie. I don't want to be too harsh, but the best way I can describe it is that they just feel a bit amateur. For example, there will be a point where Max, as a character, is staring at one of the old people. The old person in the corner of the room will do something creepy, but just from the way it's sort of edited or the way it's shot, it kind of lingers for a bit too longer than it should. And in some films that can be effective, but here it just felt like really awkwardly amateurishly done, as if like, oh, you should have cut like 2 seconds beforehand, or I don't know, something just felt off, and it just kind of got more weirder as the film went on. The plot itself is very reliant on you caring for Max as a character, but unfortunately, you don't get much time to really get to know him, because the runtime's quite short. I think it's only an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and the only time you've got given in the entire film to really care about him is in a literal 5 minute opening montage where you get the gist of his backstory. He's a foster kid. He had a brother. The brother died when he was very young. That's kind of all you get going in, and then that's all you have. I would say I was disappointed by this one, but I didn't really have high expectations going in. Pete Davidson tries his best, he can be good in some other films that I've seen him in, and I know he's good at comedy, obviously with Saturday Night Live, but it really does feel like he's kind of giving maybe 20% in his performance, purely because you can tell he's working really off of not much here. But yeah, The Home is the first one I wanted to talk about, and we're starting things on a pretty bum note,
No.
unfortunately.
As I said, no, I've never done London, but I've done Glasgow, and unfortunately, it seems to be a bit of a trend this year for
Mm.
FrightFest, which is a bit of a shame, because the Glasgow one I thought was probably one of the worst, and I've been going to
Yeah.
Glasgow FrightFest since around about 2010, I think it was. My
Mm.
first FrightFest Glasgow film was the Korean horror thriller I Saw the Devil Uncut.
Mm. Yeah.
And what a film that was.
Mm.
I really feel bad because I know the guys, Greg Day is one of the directors of the
Mm.
festival. He's always in contact with me, and I do my best to share as much stuff
Mm.
that he gives us. Some of the other writers, they'll do their best to review what we can, but I really
Yeah.
like to support them as much as I can, yeah, and it's really a shame. As in
Mm.
that writer, you were thinking, I believe it was Adam Cantor.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
one.
Adam Cantor is that writer. I actually like The Purge. That was
Mm.
probably the only thing that interested me in this film. However, Pete Davidson, after I seen him in Bodies,
Mm.
I was just like, nah, I'm not interested. For anyone who is interested in
Mm.
this film, Signature Entertainment are releasing it, and it's getting released in Blu-ray and DVD on the
Mhm.
29th of September. Are you someone that likes to give a little rating of these films?
Yeah, I mean, I use Letterboxd too much.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I think I gave this one 2 stars, and that's being generous. In my review, because this is one of the ones I actually wrote for the website as well.
Yeah, you did.
Um, where I tore it apart. But yeah, 2. I was deviating to like maybe a 1, but I feel like
Ooh,
2 is generous because it does have, if you can search for it, it does have a couple of redeeming aspects, but they're literally few and far between.
yeah.
And I felt a bit too harsh. I mean, I was harsh enough,
Yeah, yeah, you are.
but yeah,
Good news.
uh, yeah.
So, do you like to say go on to your next
hmm
movie? Which was
Um,
a little bit better. Still bad.
there's very much a case of 2 of them are down the bottom, and then from like the third film I'm going to mention onwards, the level of quality gets a little bit better. But I thought I'd get the 2 weaker ones out the way, which is a shame because like last year's festival, the amount I saw, there was a nice variety of like a handful of really good ones, a couple of not so good ones, and then some okay ones. So there was a lot of variety. Whereas this year, a lot of it was bottom of the barrel, and then you had a couple of good ones that came to the top. But the next one I want to talk about is one that I genuinely didn't know much going into it, and that was 213 Bones. The title alone kind of intrigued me on this one. It's about a group of anthropology students who are currently taking their final exams, but once certain members of their class start dying one by one, it kind of turns into a murder mystery whodunit of them trying to figure out who is the culprit behind these deaths, and why they're being killed in the first place. It's directed by Jeffrey Prim, who I don't think has a notable credit up to this point. I think this is his directorial debut. I think he's written the film as well. And this one is one that I felt very mixed on because I understand what it's trying to do, and there are certain things that it does throughout the film that I think worked, but it is definitely the definition of a mixed bag. It's definitely going for that sort of high school comedy approach, in well, even without leaning too far into the comedy, in terms of each of the group of classmates has their own stereotype. Some of the ones, the pothead, one's the kind of geeky girl. You've got all those stereotypes going on, and the fact that this film, I think, is set in the late 80s, early 90s. I'll get onto that in a minute in terms of why I didn't know what time period it was set, because that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of that time period of like 80s going into 90s, they're dressed the part. One of them has like a center part, like one of the guys has a center parting with rounded glasses. He looks like the main character from Disney's Atlantis. um, and you've even got one of the girls has got like Cyndi Lauper style hair that's with colours in it done up at the back. Like they're going for all the stereotypes. Some of the humour works. I think the best thing about this film is the dynamic of the characters. Yes, they're very one note. You don't really get much development in terms of who they are as characters besides the relationships of, oh, so and so is with them and so is with them. But apart from that, apart from the lack of development, I think the actors do a decent job of trying to make the characters better than the way they're written. The actual plot of the film is very familiar. We've seen this sort of thing a million times before. It doesn't break any new ground on this sort of thing. And the way it all kind of unravels in the final act is very good and well executed. But again, you can kind of see a lot of it coming from a mile away. And yeah, tonally, it can be a little bit all over the place because it doesn't know whether to commit to the high school, coming of age drama comedy side of things or whether it wants to be a slasher thriller. When it does commit to one of those two things, it's fine, but I just wish it kind of knew what it was and found that blend. The reason why I say I didn't quite couldn't quite figure out what time period it was set in is because they're dressed like they're from the 80s. The soundtrack is very much there are points where I think you get like Soundgarden, like 90s music or like grunge. But then there are other moments where it transitions with like some guitar music that sounds like it's from a copy of American Pie. So I didn't know if it was set in the 90s or if it was the 80s or if it was the 2000s. And it's one of those things where it addresses it right at the start, but if you blink and miss it, you've you're kind of on your own. And that it's a very minute thing to nitpick, but it was one thing that kind of kept bugging me the whole time. It was just like, are you set in the 80s or the 90s? Please commit. But yeah, this one's fine. I think it will have some fans who will appreciate the things it's trying to play upon, like the tropes and that. But for me, I thought it was absolutely middle of the road.
I'm actually looking on the website of People's Movies at I posted the trailer, but the trailer was like 20 seconds, so there's not much in it. And I'm reading the synopsis. There's nothing there to say it's set in the 80s or the 90s. However, you're saying obviously with the music, I'm sure my age. If it is the 90s, I am probably the age of these characters. I recently, last month, celebrated being 25 again. So that gives you a clue of my age, To show another thing, I'll show my age as well. When I was 17, I saw Nirvana, their one and only time in Glasgow. And
totally not jealous at all.
No, 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 no. So I see all the young folks wearing these Nirvana t-shirts, and I asked one of them because I work for a very well-known airline. They wear red, and they have a song where they talk about holding hands. And I saw a few young folks, and I'm just saying, yeah. My first ever gig was that. A few times it's the parents who are similar age to me. Others say, no, I just liked the t-shirt. They didn't even know who it was. I mean, you've got one of the greatest rock bands ever t-shirt on, Yeah, so yeah, it's here. It's when it comes to your sort of slasher horror, your characters. I'm one of these controversial people. Is slasher actually horror? Or is it just crime thriller type thing? If you know what I mean. But I do see why it's called horror, you know.
Mm.
It's the one part of the horror genre it does not appeal to me at all.
Mm.
So yeah, if you gave me like Friday the 13th for
Mm.
Halloween, I'd be like, yeah, whatever, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, it was one of the films. It was like, yeah, people are gonna
Mm.
love it or hate it. It's probably in the right place, the right
Mm.
venue, you know, for that. So what we'll do is you'll get you to review another movie, and then
Yep.
I'll do my movie, which I've seen.
Yep.
So you
Yep.
want to go to your next movie?
So my next movie is the first one that I watched. Again, I think this co-opened the festival alongside The Home. I almost called it The Room. That's a completely different movie.
Yeah,
This next one surprised me a lot. It's Bambi the Reckoning, directed by Dan Allen. Um, and the premise of this one, I mean, most people know what the premise of this is
yeah,
going to be. But the premise, for what it is after a mother and a son survive a car wreck, courtesy of the titular deer. They then have to survive the night and find the rest of their family who they were going to visit, and basically survive the rampage of this mutated version of the childhood classic Bambi that we all know and love. I kind of said this in the review that I wrote for the website, is that I'm not really a fan of these sorts of, I mean, just the ideas of them alone, turning childhood favourite characters where the IPs have kind of rolled over and you can do whatever you want with
yeah,
them now. Just to turn them into horror characters is, I mean, there's something a bit sacrilegious about that in the first place. And I've not seen Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, but earlier this year I did see Screamboat, and it was the worst thing I've seen all year so far. And going into Bambi the Reckoning, I was expecting just another one of them. Just, oh, we've got this IP and we're just going to make a film just for the sake of it because we can. And to my surprise, yes, it does do that, but it actually feels like it handles it with a little bit more care and thought than some of the other examples I mentioned, for a number of reasons. First of all, the film opens with an animated backstory origin as to why Bambi is the way that they are, in terms of the fact that Bambi is trying to seek revenge on the fact that their mother was killed. That really surprised me from the word go, because I was not expecting there to be any animation. But one, it's a nice callback to the original Disney film, even though it's nowhere near like quality level on the same standard as Disney. But it's also quite a nice way to open it, and it's also just really decent animation. It's nothing mind blowing, but for what they're going for, it's all right. There's a couple of things I really appreciated. One, the film knows exactly what it is and just kind of gets on with it. It doesn't waste any time from the word go. As soon as that prologue's out the way, it just gets straight into it, knows exactly what it is. The CGI on the mutated Bambi is actually really impressive.
mm,
Again, going off of Screamboat, which had some really dire effects, like you could tell that that's a guy in a mutated Steamboat Willie costume on a green screen. This, though the CGI of the deer is not, you know, Avatar levels, it's actually very convincing in a few scenes. And I think because of the choice of having it set at night time and really using a lot of the dark, dimly lit and dark settings that the film goes for, I think they do a very good job. It's a little bit like the Jurassic Park thing. They know what limitations they have and use shadows to kind of hide it a little bit and make it look a bit more convincing than it does. Obviously, me comparing Bambi the Reckoning to Jurassic Park is sacrilege as well, but it's that same approach, and for the most part, it works here. There's a couple of shots that do look a bit iffy, but I would say about 80% of the film, it does the job. You can still tell that's a CGI mutated deer, but it looks better than you're expecting it to. The performances and story are all fine. It's nothing mind blowing. It's exactly what you expect from this sort of film. It's at least, again, an attempt at trying to give some depth and character to these characters, but it really doesn't go any further than that. It's 10 times better than Screamboat, where you just had, you know, stereotypes that you knew were just going to get killed off instantly. And even though you do get that a little bit here, it's nowhere near as offensive or as bad as that one. The resolution of everything is fine, if a little bit rushed. I do like the overall final scene. But yeah, this one really surprised me. It's not the best film in the world. I mean, nothing called Bambi the Reckoning is going to be the best film ever made. But it's better than it has any right to be. I think when I reviewed it for the site, I gave it 2.5 stars. And for context, on Letterboxd, I gave 213 Bones 2.5 stars as well. Yeah, not quite generous enough to give it 3, but this one is not too bad. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's also not the best thing either.
I have seen the two Winnie the Pooh movies. The first one, I get threatened online by one of the producers. Names won't not be because I forgot his name already. Because I was highly critical of the movie. I do the press days in Glasgow, Scottish press days. It's the FD8 that do them. They do them in London as well. They gave us the second movie, and that is a bit like the movie I'm going to review next. But the second Winnie the Pooh movie is terrible. It's basically the first one was terrible with no budget. Second one was terrible with a budget. I think it was Derek Jacobi's in it.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was Derek Jacobi playing a perverted. He's meant to be a Scottish accent, but all says less about that. Aaron, I'll give you a few minutes to breathe it. I'm going to do my review. So, I know I said I wasn't at the FrightFest, but if you're a Cineworld Unlimited card holder, or I think a Limitless card holder for Odeon, there was a screen unseen this week. We're actually recording this on the 27th of August 2025. So at the start of this week, there was a screen unseen, and that screen unseen was Toxic Avenger, which played at FrightFest. But a few days before that, I actually played at the Edinburgh Film Festival, which I'm sort of glad to see it's now sort of back to where it used to be before all the troubles happened. Plus, the film house is now reopened, so that's great news. Troma, the Toxic Avenger. This was actually made in 2023, but I had a few sort of issues, trying to get a distributor. I think just because of the sort of tone of the content of the film. It's a bit graphic, it's a little bit violent, and it's a bit bonkers. So that's sort of one of the reasons I think it got delayed. But obviously, this 2025 is starting to get some festivals, but it's also getting launched this Friday, which is the 29th of August, in the UK and Ireland by Signature Entertainment. This one stars quite a few well-known faces. First of all, it's directed by Macon Blair. Macon Blair is also an actor. He starred in probably one of my favourite films from 2013, which was Blue Ruin, which was an absolutely fantastic movie. Have you seen that, Aaron?
I have, yeah. No, he's really good in that, and he pops up in stuff every once in a while, and I do like his work.
Yeah, and it was also in Jeremy Saulnier's Game Room. That was a bit of a bonkers movie as well, with Sir Patrick Stewart, as I call him. Jean-Luc Picard is a Nazi. Yeah, that's that's a lot to think about. But you see it, it's one of them, just go in. A bit like this movie, actually. Just go in, leave your brain at the box office, and just enjoy the ride. Macon Blair-directed, he's also in it as well. He plays Dennis, who pops out every so often. But Peter Dinklage is our anti-hero here, Winston Gooze, who obviously becomes the Toxic Avenger. People know that it's set in Tromaville, but in this one it's actually set in, I think it's called St. Romer's Village. But however, anyone who's quite smart here will actually know that is actually a smart incarnation of Tromaville. If you put it all round, and when you watch the film, there's a little bit, there's a road sign. It's missing a few letters and it actually says Tromaville. There's another few little things. Tromaville, the original Toxic Avenger in this. So, as I said, Peter Dinklage, he plays Winston Gooze. he's struggling a little bit here. He's basically a janitor or BTH Chemicals, who are the biggest employer of St Roma Village. It's in the description. The CEO is Bob, who's played by Kevin Bacon, or Robert Granger is his actual name. And this sort of starts out with he's coming into town. He's just lost his other half, but he's also got a stepson out. He's called Ward. Wade, sorry, is played by Jacob Tremblay. Things together for him. He wants to give him the best life as he can, but he also finds out something medically is wrong with him as well. So he's getting into desperate needs here, and he goes and confronts Bob Grabinger, no Granger, Bob Grabinger or Robert Grabinger at an event, and things happen. And he falls into a pool of toxic sludge. The Toxic Avenger is born. At the beginning of the film, we do meet another character who is played by Taylor Page, JJ, who we find out is employed by BTH Chemicals. And she is trying to expose the corruption, things that are happening in Troma and St Roma Village. People are dying, a lot of things. She just wants to show the corruption of Bob. And Bob, being Bob, he knows he's corrupt. He doesn't really care. A bit like governments of the world these days, you know, where they don't really care. They know what they're doing, you know. Yeah. We'll get more political. That's what the political we'll get, but you know, everyone to their own, you know. Basically, things start to happen, and Bob starts to find out the Toxic Avenger who does something as he's running away. It's all witnessed on television. First they all think he's a monster, and then he's a hero. Bob notices that it's actually Winston, so he wants to get Winston. So he kidnaps his family to get him here. So I don't want to go too much in it, but if you've seen the original Troma film, Lloyd Kaufman version of the Toxic Avenger, you'll have an idea what's going on here, and because this is really like a love letter to the Toxic Avenger and Troma Films itself, and in general. And basically, if anyone's don't know what a Troma film is, that's Troma. Sorry, it's my Scottish accent. It's one of the longest running independent B-movie film studios in the world. And basically what they create are very, very, very low budget films. Indie films or B-movies they call it. And they predominantly are your sort of horror comedies. And Toxic Avenger, it's just a parody of comedies. It's basically a lot of horror. 1950s Americana, 1950s horror are in there. A lot of splatter, a lot of gore in here as well. And it's, as I said, it's a parody of these things. And it plays up in a very, very good, very, very big style. I mean, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Kevin Costner, James Gunn, the director, Eli Roth, and even Samuel Jackson, to name a few, have all appeared in Troma films over the years. You know, Toxic Avenger is probably the biggest movie. And then your Class of Nukem High and Troma and Juliet are probably the other two sort of well-known ones. Somebody laughed at me once when I told them about RoboCop years ago. Says RoboCop is actually, I think, a bit of a cautionary film of what life was going to be like. Well, that was made, I think it was 87, so about 30, 40 years' time. We're actually here now. That corporations are going to run everything. You know, and guess what? Depending on what your political views are, in a way they are. I mean, certain events that have happened over the few years that I gave you an idea and an indication. Corruption of the governments, and I mean both sides of the government, Tory and Labour government. There's a lot of corruption going in there as well. And it's basically RoboCop and Toxic Avenger actually do share very, very similar themes. Obviously, they both of them have like like a person done wrong, you know,
Yeah.
and through a sort of tragic event, through extreme circumstances, you know, they turn into some sort of monstrous or sort of someone with a bit a superpower, you know, to fight evil, you know, and the corrupt and anyone that sort of gets in the way of the corruption as well. You know, it's justice for the sort of like the victims in that, you know, and the
Yeah.
innocent, you know, and anyone that's getting bullied. And both also, you probably could say, yeah, a dystopian world.
Mm.
Robocop definitely is. Yeah, the Toxic Avenger is. These powerful companies have all got their mucky hands in every part of their lives. Because during the film, you see that there's, in America they've got the medical insurance. You know, it's BTH, it supply that they're who they employ, and it's quite funny because and I think they did it in Black Mirror recently, with one of the episodes
Yeah, they did,
where
yeah.
there's the levels of of medical insurance get you this and that. You think you're covered, but you're
Mm.
not covered. It gets in a little bit of that. Obviously, the bank, they run the banks. There's one point where Winston, before everything happens, he's desperate and he can see he's got no money. And this is how he gets so desperate as well in there.
Mm.
But also, there's also the criminal underbelly of these worlds are doing their own thing, and obviously the people in power don't bother about them as well, you know.
Mm.
And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so as I said, both films are obviously got a lot of satire in there, but it's also they're covering a lot of societal issues, and which Toxic Avenger does as well. But that's sort of more interesting than sort of like
Mm.
the greed of the corporations and how cynical they are with the sort of environment and that, you know, how they treat the environment.
Yeah.
And but this is where Robocop and the Toxic Avenger are tonally different. As I said earlier, this is a dark comedy, horror comedy,
Mm.
sci-fi comedy, because it pushes on the sort of boundaries of sort of gore and how far and the pollution and the abuse and things like that as well. You know,
Mm.
basically it poked fun at it as well. You know, and the cast in here, you can see they're having fun. They're really
Mm.
hamming up, especially Kevin Bacon who plays Bob. He's
Mm.
properly hamming up here. You can see it for his hairstyle and the sort of things that he's doing. You know. And
Mm.
yeah, as I said, it's a love letter to Troma. There's a lot of Easter eggs in there for the Troma Army, I believe the Troma fans are called. Yeah,
Hey.
yeah, yeah. I researched that. Some research just to say because I know when there's a lot of IPs that get known have get named for the hardcore fans.
Mm.
You know, there's a lot of stuff in it they'll like. There's a lot of things like the music.
Mm.
Is very 80s, very 80s. So there's a lot of sort of punk in there. Not a bit like Cox did with Emilio Estevez.
Yeah. I
Uh,
know which one you mean. I can't for the life of me remember
the name's just right in my head. It's a bit like
Mm.
that sort of style of music. There's a bit of punk in there, but there's also big hair metal, which was massive in '80s. So it is got a lot of '80s in there as well, you know, sort of in there. But as I mentioned before in one of your reviews,
Mm.
this is like Toxic Avenger with a budget.
Mm.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they try and play it as much close to the actual film, the original film as they can, you know, but with a bit of slightly higher quality there. A lot of
Yeah.
things happen, eyeballs pop out, people get burned, people get shot, people get their heads ripped off, people get other things ripped off. Bob even has his own goons, which are run by his own brother, which is Elijah Wood, who
Mm.
plays Fritz, I think he's called. Fritz, who looks like a cross between the guy from the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Uncle Fester, I think it is. You know, for the Addams family.
Mm.
It sort of gives you an idea what he looks like.
Yeah.
And the goons that he runs, we end up finding it's the band. It's like a metal
Mm.
band, rap metal band. They're like a. I was brought up a metalhead, but one thing I
Mm.
hated was rap metal and Limp
Mm.
Bizkit and things like that. But they're better than Limp Bizkit, this band, but they're still bad, you know. So there's a lot of things happening there, and they're just absolutely they're actually like a cross between what was it what are they called, the band where they all wear masks, the metal band.
Oh,
Oh,
Slipknot.
Slipknot.
Yeah.
They look like rejects with Slipknot. That's what they look like. Is this a good film?
Yeah.
It depends.
Mm.
If you're a horror fan that just likes to go there and just enjoy the ride, leave your brain at the box office and just just laugh at how bad. It's one of how bad, how good it is type things. You're going to love this. FrightFest was probably the perfect audience
Yeah.
for this film because they all laugh and cringe and whatever you with them. As I've mentioned before, I've done the Glasgow FrightFest. Yeah, it's not as big as the main one, but it's still the same guys, and it's actually a lot of the guys from London come up to this. I was actually picturing them when I was watching this. Yeah, I can see them laughing, hilarious, and don't get me wrong, in the audience, they were laughing as well at it. And what I love about, see, when you get the unlimited movie, the movie you don't see, I like to look around and see how many people walk out. And very few walked out, but I think it was about 5-10 minutes into that movie, people started to get really jealous and always says, "Sorry, I'm having a dig at the team I don't support." But last week there was a certain football team played at not the east end of Glasgow, their end of Glasgow, where they were 3-0 down after 7 minutes. And I think the people that hated this Toxic Avenger Rangers fans would probably get a bit jealous because they were out before them. I digress here. So yeah, that's a perfect audience for that. It's stupid. It's very silly. It's very schlocky. It's a fun ride that people love. But if you like your horror with a little bit of seriousness in it, bit of a story, yeah, avoid it like the plague. However, if you enjoy the fun ride, yeah, you're going to get some enjoyment in it. As I said, Sing Entertainment are releasing this in UK and Irish cinemas from the 29th of August, and I'm giving it 3 stars. So
Nice.
That's the Toxic Avengers. You want to continue with your own movies, Harry?
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm kind of gutted that I missed the Toxic Avenger because it was definitely the big one at the festival this year. Yeah, I'm kind of gutted I missed it because it does look like, I say fun in inverted commas, if you like that sort of like gory over the top. Because I saw the trailer and was like, oh god, that looks like it could be a bit much.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the next two rather quickly because there's not much to really say about them other than they are good, but unfortunately we're in like that middle of the road area now. So the next one is The Caretaker, directed by Luke Tedder. This is his directorial debut. The synopsis of this film on Letterboxd does not do it justice. Basically, it is about a mute man who has suffered a lot of trauma in his life, who becomes the caretaker at this high-privileged school called Lockbridge Academy, which is run by an aristocratic rich family called the Aberdeens. Yeah, this film is it's not subtle, and it's this one's a weird one. Again, similarly to 213 Bones, even though I prefer The Caretaker to 213 Bones, this one has just as much good going for it as it does not so good, but I can see the potential in this one compared to 213 Bones. I think it has a central mystery that I wasn't aware of going into it, but that kind of showed itself very early on and then kind of progressed into this whole angle that I was not expecting. That whole aspect of the film I really liked. The performances, especially from Ben Probert and Mackenzie Larson, are really good. Ben plays Eddie, who is the mute caretaker. He does a lot, obviously because he can't speak, he does a lot of good, I don't know what else to call it, face acting. He shows a lot of pain, and he can say a lot obviously without saying anything at all. And he develops a relationship with the cleaner of the academy, which is played by Mackenzie Larson. At first, their relationship felt a bit forced, but as the film progresses, I thought they made it work purely from their performances alone. And those are my biggest positives. I think the aspects where it falls flat purely in the execution of the mute disability as a whole, because this film goes more in a thriller direction than a horror. There's a couple of horror jump scare moments that I think work, but again, they're tied to the mystery aspect. And this film mostly tries to, whenever it wants to deviate and tackle the childhood trauma aspect and the aspect of his disability, which if you're going to put your main character having a disability into a thriller, that kind of needs to be a drawing point in terms of the mechanics of how the mystery plays out. But this film very much tackles it in a way where 1 minute they're focusing on the mystery or the next scene focuses on his disability, and there's no merging of the two. It's very much one or the other. And I feel like there could have been more of an attempt at merging the two. The only real times you get to spend delving into his childhood trauma and his disability as a thing that is a hindrance on his life is really at the start and the end of the film, where it gets a little bit more experimental visually. Apart from that, everything else, the film would have pretty much played out exactly the same if he wasn't mute. It's just the start and the end is where it really comes into its own in that theming. And I feel like it could have gone a bit further with that. So that's kind of where I lie on it. It's a decent film as it is, but there's definitely a lot of potential with where it could have gone in a lot of areas. But this does have me intrigued. As this is Luke Tedder's directorial debut, knowing what he could have done with this, I'm intrigued to see what he does with future projects, because this one does show a lot of potential.
Do you know what? Do you think this year, like I noticed in the Glasgow version, there was a lot of it was very documentary
Mm.
focused. Do you think this year's London one is very thriller focused? Well, the
Yeah.
festival doesn't say it's just purely horror.
Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of people who also covered the festival in some shape or form, and everyone, like you said, has been saying the exact same thing. Even I've said it to a few people, whereby out of all the ones I've seen, it's been 80% thrillers and like 20% horror, like full blown horror.
Yeah,
Which isn't an issue. I do prefer thrillers over horror, but for a horror themed festival, it does seem a bit strange.
yeah.
Considering last year where there was a nice mix of a bit of everything,
Hmm.
and I think there's even been a mix in previous years, but this year, I don't know why it was leaning more towards thriller, but that ended up being the case.
Yeah. I'm wondering because obviously we only see it for face value, and I
Mm,
know that the guys for FrightFest probably had a
mm,
lot of went after a lot of movies, but due to certain circumstances, they were unable to get it for the festival. So obviously, sometimes you've
mm.
got to go for a bit like I'm going to say again, football,
Yeah,
where maybe a certain team has to finish by a certain position,
yeah,
or they need to get into a certain tournament for the management to give the manager to get and get the players. Whoever, if they
mm,
don't get to that, they will still get some money, but they won't get the money they were expecting. So
yeah,
obviously,
definitely.
so obviously, there's potential that's a reason. It's probably the same with the Glasgow one. That was why there was so many
Mm,
documentaries in there. There was, don't get me wrong,
mm,
we had a bit of a mixed bag, and some people reviewed them and they enjoyed what they got, and
mm,
so that was the case. So,
mm.
your next movie.
Yes, the next one, also for context, I'll give The Caretaker 3 stars, and this next one, thankfully, is just straight up horror.
Yeah,
Compared to everything else we've talked about. This film is called Your Host, directed by D.W. Medoff. Probably butchered the surname pronunciation there. But the premise of this one is very simple and very to the point. 4 friends get trapped in a sadistic game show forced to outwit a twisted serial killer who is presenting their deaths like a game show. That's the entire premise in a nutshell, and that's kind of all you need to know going into it, because it's one of those films where the less you know about it going into it, the better, because there were a surprising amount of twists and turns in the plot that I honestly didn't see coming, because I was expecting what the premise gives, and you do get that. It's part Saw, it's part not taking itself that seriously, it's got a sense of humour. That's kind of what I was expecting, and you definitely get that in droves. But there is an actual plot to the film and why these things are happening, and the way those developed I thought was very interesting, and I liked how it played out. This one, again, is similar to some of the other ones I've mentioned. For as much as it does right, it does falter in a few areas, but this one definitely has a lot more going for it in a positive angle. I think first act, it's only really the first 15 minutes where you're getting used to the four main characters that you're with throughout the entire film, so you get to know them. Unfortunately, that bit is probably the weakest, because you're supposed to care about these characters, but throughout that entire 15 minutes, they're at each other's throats. So you get no banter or anything. It's just them arguing with each other, and then they're thrown into this situation, and you find out that these four not very particularly nice people, you find out through revelations later, they're just not as nice as you were expecting them to be, and apparently they're even worse according to things that you find out. So how you're supposed to root for them, I don't know, but that's by far the weakest element. But the film knows that's kind of the weakest element, because it tries to get past that first bit as quickly as possible to get to the stuff you've come to see. And once it's set in the serial killer's domain, everything from that point onwards is an absolute blast. It's got a very rapid well, I say absolute blast. It's gruesome as hell. It's a lot gorier than I was expecting, but it's got a very rapid pace to it. The best aspect of the film by far is Jackie Earle Haley, who plays the game show host. There's a manic madness to his presenting. He is presenting it just like a cheesy game show host from the 80s or 90s. Even in the way he speaks, he's very much a case of like, okay, and they're just coming up next on the, very much over exaggerated. He plays it very well, but there's also a lot of moments where that facade breaks and you see a vulnerable side to him, and the fact that he's mentally broken, or that something has gone wrong in his life to get him to this point. And I really like the fact that he really played it that really well. He's chewing the scenery, but not in a way that can be distracting. It's working perfectly for the tone. The kills are graphic. There's one in particular that feels like it goes on for ages because it is so graphic, but it just goes to show that it left a lasting impact. And yeah, that's all I'm really going to say about this one. It knows what it is and sticks to it, and it was a lot better than I was expecting it to be, and I gave it the same rating I gave The Caretaker. Even though I do think this is the better film, still gave it 3 stars. There are some choices it makes that were a bit questionable, but overall, if you know what you want going into this, you'll get exactly that.
On Jackie Earle Haley, there's actually an interview with him on the peoplesmovies.com. Also, obviously, Aaron, you're not covering every film that's out there. There is going to be other reviews, including some of your own reviews on the website.
Yeah.
So after you guys, you listen to this podcast, head over to peoplesmovies.com, have a look at the reviews. Reviews here. Okay, so you want to go into your... Is it the last one now?
I've got 2 left, but hopefully these should be quite brief. But these are the 2 best things I saw at the festival. Say what you will about the other ones we mentioned. So this one actually I do have a review for on the website, and it is The Rose, directed by Seth Daly. And again, this one has an incredibly simple premise that works beautifully for its simplicity. 7-year-old Lucy wakes up in the middle of a mysterious cornfield, having no memory of what happened, and but the one thing she does know is that she has to escape these three hooded men who are have weapons and are out to kill her. That's all the film gives you as a premise, and that is literally the entire first act of the film. And this film is really good. There is one thing about it that holds it back from being great, but for premise alone and the way it's executed, the first act delivers that entire premise, almost feeling like a mini condensed short film in itself. It's really well executed. The whole thing is shot on 35mm film, and in a lot of ways, this film reminded me of last year's Strange Darling. I do prefer Strange Darling as a film because I like the way it handled its plot and the way it was non-linear in execution. This one is very much what you see is what you get. The entire first act, which again delivers on that premise of her escaping the cornfield, has no dialogue in it at all. And I just loved the fact that it played it simple, played it straight, and relied purely on visual storytelling. It does it really well. The final act is where it really doubles down on the violence, and again, that is really satisfying. Where it falls apart is the middle act, which is where a lot of the character growth in trying to get to understand the characters a little bit more comes from. Unfortunately, it grinds to a halt a bit too much and loses too much momentum. It does realise that about halfway through the second act, and then, gets back to what we've come to see. But I feel like that is literally the only thing stopping this film from being great. If they just tightened up that middle act a little bit more, or just did something to condense it a tiny bit, then I feel like it would be a pretty damn great movie. But for the most part, this is a really good film, and I cannot recommend it enough. I gave it 3.5 stars. It is this close to being a 4 if they just tighten that middle act up.
Ah, yeah. The picture we use on the actual review, I really like it. The sky at the back. I'm an enthusiast with photography, and that's what caught my eye. And it reminded me of that the Mask Killer, that film. It was last year, the year before, the Arty horror film, the one where they follow the actual serial killer. Serial killer does
Yeah.
that. It reminded me a little bit about that one. But yeah. So, what is your final one?
So the final one, which is the best thing I saw at the festival, and this also actually played at Edinburgh Film Festival at the same time, is Redux Redux, directed by Kevin McManus and Matthew McManus. And the premise of this one, this also has my favourite premise of any film I saw in the entire festival, is that a woman travels the multiverse to kill her daughter's murderer over and over again in different parallel universes until she finds some form of justice to stop the revenge streak. Again, similar to your host, the little you know about this going into it, the better. This is the one film that kind of felt a bit out of place at FrightFest because there is no horror in it at all. It is literally just an indie drama sci-fi thriller with road trip elements, and there's no horror in it at all. That being said, if you put the horror thing aside, if in terms of just being a film, it is brilliant. Like I said, it is the best thing I saw at the festival. It's one of it could sneak up to being one of my favorite films of the year. It's just really well executed. The performances are all great. It's shot really well. It knows its premise and continuously finds ways to make that premise interesting, because when you see that initial premise, it could very much be a one-trick pony and kind of outdo what it wants to do within the first 5 minutes. Thankfully, it finds ways to keep it fresh. And the two lead performances by Michaela McManus and Stella Marcus are the driving force of the film, because they do form a bit of a mother-daughter friendship over the film. And yeah, this one is the only film at the festival I gave a 4 stars to, and deservedly so. I think it got rave reviews from FrightFest and Edinburgh, and I think it played at South by Southwest, I want to say. But yes.
Overlook, Bradley Hadcroft, who's
Mm,
a main horror guy on the website, he reviewed it in Overlook back in April.
mm.
So his review I've included
Mm.
in the coverage of the Fright Fest and Edinburgh. So,
Yeah, I'm slightly gutted that I didn't cover this one as a written review because I could have written like a 1,500 page essay on how good it is. But yeah, go and read Bradley's review. It's really his review does it justice, and the film as a whole, when it does get a wider release, do check it out because it's really really good.
and there you have it, folks. That is the Fright Fest special. And that's your wrap, folks. That was episode 49 of the Chronicle. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much, Aaron, for joining us as well. Would you like to let people know where they can find or even watch or read your reviews online?
So you can find me on most social media platforms at Arun Azar. It's basically my first name backwards, mixed with a nickname. On YouTube, I have the YouTube channel Aaron at the Movies, which is where I review films and talk about stuff film related and TV related in YouTube form. I've been doing that for 10 years, and obviously I write for the People's Movies as well as Get Your Comic On, Film Hounds, and that's kind of it. They're the main outlets that I write for at the moment. I thought there was a fourth one, but I think my brain's just gone.
Okay, so for the Chronicle and People's Movies, it's at Facebook, is at the People's Movies, same with X, that's at the People's Movie, Instagram at the People's Movies, YouTube, we're at peoplesmovies.com. You can also find the Chronicle Men in the popular down websites to download your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, Podbean, which is our main one, Spotify, Amazon Music, and YouTube, to name a few. Sometimes we'll continue to chat at the Chronicle Take Two. You can tune into social media and the People's Movies for future episodes. You can sign up for our email newsletter. You'll find the link over at the People's Movies. We are updating the newsletter at the moment, so stay tuned for that. We are a very, very small website, so you can show your support for the Chronicle and People's Movies with Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal, but also share the podcast on social media with your friends and family. And if you're listening via one of those podcast sites I mentioned, do give us a rating. We are a very small podcast, and sharing it and rating it does help people find it even more. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us. And for you, the viewers, thank you very much and enjoy the movies.